on my way up to Canaan land. I'm on my way up to Canaan land. I'm on my way up to Canaan land. On my way, glory, hallelujah, I'm on my way. It's a mighty hard climb, but I'm on my way.
Hello, glad you could join me. Today, I would like us to look at an organisation called Extinction Rebellion. I'm sure there can be very few people who have not heard that name or seen the antics of Extinction Rebellion played out on the news channel nightly. Some of the stunts at first glance appear to be somewhat comic in nature, but there is little doubt that the tactics they've employed have inconvenienced many people. However, it was the appearance of one of their leadership on BBC Question Time that triggered me to make this video, because he had uttered only a few sentences before I realised we had a serious issue, and this is why I'm making this response. In this video, I'll be using a lot of information contained in the report on Extinction Rebellion produced by the Policy Exchange. If you need a more detailed and comprehensive treatment, I will include a link to the full report in the description box below, along with links to additional background information that I will introduce as we go along. Extinction Rebellion has without doubt captured the public imagination in recent months, and as an organisation it has enlisted tens of thousands of enthusiastic followers, who have been prepared not only to protest, but are even willing to be arrested for their cause. This apparent willingness by its followers to not only engage in civil disobedience, but also subject themselves to arrest, is no accident or unintended consequence. It is by design. It is planned. And while the majority of these activists appear to be genuinely concerned about climate change and other environmental issues, this is not reflected in the leadership, which has another agenda in mind. And this agenda will, I hope, become obvious as we look at the facts. Extinction Rebellion did not appear fully formed a few months or even a year ago. It has been in existence in one form or another for some time. It has morphed, taking on several identities to take advantage of topical issues. But we can track its development because the leadership, the driving force behind this organisation, has remained consistent throughout its evolution. The ideology has been consistent, and its primary focus is not on environmental issues, but rather its objective is political change. And regardless of what most of its supporters might believe, environmental concerns are secondary. They are merely useful coloration that masks a more sinister and radical political agenda. Extinction Rebellion in its current form was established in 2018, when a group of radical activists devised a strategy for a new environmentalist campaign, leading to the launch of a declaration of rebellion in October at a rally in Parliament Square. Extinction Rebellion openly rejects both our representative democracy and the free liberal free market economy, and explicitly seeks to overturn both. Its leadership has been very clear that these objectives are indivisible from their demands on the environment. Radical political change is coupled with the solutions they offer to perceived environmental issues. We can trace the origins of Extinction Rebellion back to the Occupy movement. Occupy was active between 2011 and 2012. It was concerned with advancing social and economic justice and the introduction of new forms of democracy, whatever that might mean. Its objectives could be summarised as anti-capitalist and anti-free market. It was a radical socialist movement. Its slogan, if you remember, was "We are the 99%. It had global offshoots like Occupy London, which shared common goals. It was during this period of activism a network of militants called Rising Up formed, which was the campaigning arm of a company called Compassionate Revolution Limited. These two organisations, Rising Up and Compassionate Revolution, sit behind Extinction Rebellion. So we go from the anti-globalist and anti-capitalist Occupy movement to Rising Up, leading us to their current campaign, Extinction Rebellion. But regardless of environmental coloration, the radical political objectives remain consistent and unchanging. They reject economic growth and promote an ideology of post-capitalism and degrowth as a means to reduce consumption. They also favour what appears to be economic redistribution, which they acknowledge will result in a reduction of living standards for everyone. Extinction Rebellion has its roots in the political extremism of green anarchism, eco-socialism, and radical anti-capitalist environmentalism. It is not a single organisation, but the campaigning wing of two fringe organisations which are steeped in extreme left-wing radical politics. The sudden rise of Extinction Rebellion has owed much to the strategy of the campaign's founders, most notably Dr. Gail Bradbrook and Roger Hallam of Rising Up. Hallam was an organic farmer on a 10-acre farm near Llandilo in South Wales. In this effort he was spectacularly unsuccessful. His farm failed. Hallam attributes this failure to what he describes as a series of extreme weather events. Why these extreme events were confined to a single farm is a mystery yet to be solved. It would, I suppose, make him an expert in failing food sources, but his agricultural expertise is not of interest to us, but rather his academic studies. He has spent several years meticulously researching and developing a theory of mass protest movements and civil disobedience. Dr. Gail Bradbrook, on the other hand, is an academic who appears to have been politically active even at a very young age. At 14, she joined the Green Party and was an enthusiastic campaigner for animal rights. This interest in political activism seems to have stayed with her, as she is the central figure in Rising Up, and along with Hallam and several others, she is credited with founding Extinction Rebellion. It's interesting to note that, like Dr. Bradbrook, many of the founders of this campaign have long established links to the Green Party. Extinction Rebellion's success rests on public concern relating to climate and environmental issues. The warnings about cataclysmic climate change is key. They deploy these dire warnings with particular effect. The recruitment lectures that Hallam and Bradbrook have given across the country have emphasised a message of environmental catastrophe and impending doom. In these lectures, both Hallam and Bradbrook have encouraged their audiences to engage with a message at an intensely emotional level, even encouraging crying and time for personal reflection as part of an experiential process to be worked through before committing to taking action. This process plays an important part in securing the commitment of potential adherents who are being asked to sign up for arrest and prison time, or even to quit their jobs to volunteer full-time for the rebellion. The picture painted about ecological disaster is used to construct an argument about the unsustainability of the current economic and political system, which they claim is almost at the point of collapse. They subtly change the message depending on audience. Older audiences will be told of dire consequences for children and grandchildren, while younger audiences will be asked to imagine their parents lying at home, not having eaten for weeks. They then employ a technique which could have been lifted directly from a Soviet political manual. Rather than questions and answers at the end of the talk, the audience is split into small groups so they can reflect on how they feel about the facts that they were presented with. This is quite a technique, as it leaves the presenter's opinions unchallenged and restricts the participants to reflection on their emotional response. It also has the advantage that any dissent will be confined to a small group. It will be after these emotional group reflections that the participants will be asked to commit themselves to the cause. There is little doubt that the structure of these so-called talks has been carefully thought through, and it doesn't require very much healthy skepticism to suspect the organisers are being deliberately controlling of their audiences. This is cult-like manipulation, and it is executed cynically. So what's the political ideology on offer here? Marxists believe that the capitalist economic system must inevitably collapse because of its own internal contradictions. Extinction Rebellion, on the other hand, holds that capitalism must be brought to an end because it is destroying and depleting the resources that it depends upon. A subtle difference, but both bring us to the same conclusion. Capitalism must end. The political objectives are not being concealed. Yet the leadership, at least in relation to the Extinction Rebellion campaign, avoids openly embracing anti-capitalism, while nonetheless undertaking anti-capitalist activity in practice. And this activity is plain to see. They did not accidentally park their tents in Smithfield Market. They had chosen it deliberately as a symbolic and legitimate target. Their plans for our democratic institutions are even more troubling, and it is quite clearly expressed in one of the 3 demands made by the movement. Our representative democratic systems must go, to be replaced by what is quaintly described as a citizens' assembly. If that doesn't send a shiver down your spine, nothing will. While the leadership may frame this as a democratic move, it is anything but democratic. The assembly members would be briefed by experts, and as Bradbrook puts it in the video, Welcome to the Rebellion, and I quote here, "There are ways in which people can have a voice. We want to have a citizens' assembly." And I think that's a really exciting innovation for a campaign to be calling for. We would take, and I think it's around 1,000 people by sortation, by, selection, like you would for a jury, and they would look at the reality of the situation, and if they don't know it, they'll be shocked and frightened, and then they'll be presented with potential solutions, and they'll need to come up with a package for the UK. Now, can you guess who will be providing the potential solutions at this point? It should be obvious by now exactly what the game plan would be. The assembly would be managed, the options limited, and the members would have little to do other than rubber stamp the diktats of the party. I don't think it's an exaggeration to claim this is Orwellian or a dystopian vision. I can think of no other description that would do justice to the ambitions of these people. This is thinly veiled tyranny, and as a political ideology, it is totally alien and extremely dangerous, even if partly implemented. Bradbrook herself stated while speaking at the public event, and I quote, "We are at a choice point. Do we want more democracy or do we want less? Because this democracy is not working for us. In my view, it's a fake democracy." There can be absolutely no doubt that Bradbrook welcomes less democracy, and a citizens' assembly, while sounding democratic, is the preferred tool for delivering less democracy. And let's be absolutely clear on this, just in case you've missed the point. The 3 demands made by Extinction Rebellion are transitional. They are not the entire bill of sale. Roger Hallam has made comments that suggest Extinction Rebellion attitude to its demands may be essentially tactical. In a YouTube video titled "We've Already Won," Hallam is seen discussing the importance of having intermediate demands in protest movements. In that video, he goes on to suggest that initially it may be more effective for the demands to be broad enough to bring large numbers of people on board with the protests because, and I quote, "they can project their own political egos onto the movement." Politicians, media, and the public associate Extinction Rebellion with environmentalism, but its core leadership is deeply rooted in extreme left-wing politics. Those running the campaign project environmental concerns, which do enjoy significant public sympathy. But there is an obvious political agenda that, if even only partially successful, would lead to major economic and democratic damage to this country. They are exploiting very real concerns over climate change and deliberately amplifying the very worst case scenarios presented by climate change alarmists. And they do this in complete disregard for the science, for which they show scant regard. The message is as scary as they can make it. The intent is to raise anxiety and fear in anyone who listens. Fear over fact is key and renders the target audience emotionally susceptible to the cause. You should be under no illusions about how dangerous this movement is to our way of life. Their declared aims are destabilizing and extremist in nature. These are not green activists, but hardened left-wing radical opportunists. The words of Extinction Rebellion's founders and its posts on social media make this clear. The objective is system change. This means bringing down our existing democratic system, which the campaign's leading figures hold in contempt. This would inevitably lead to rapid economic disaster for this country. More worrying by far, which is common on the extreme left, is that they have no serious explanations for how the country would function if their demands were actually implemented. The BBC is being extremely cavalier in their treatment of this movement, and politicians of all stripes should be extremely cautious when engaging with the leadership. and most definitely not consider any actions that could legitimise the cause. Ministers in particular should not be in meetings with these people, nor allow themselves to be panicked into declarations of climate emergencies, which only serves to boost the message used by Extinction Rebellion in recruiting for the cause. Extinction Rebellion openly incites the public to break the law, with the expressed aim of causing severe economic damage in the short term and overturning representative democracy and the liberal free market in the long term. Given the opportunity, they will make a desert of our home, and this is independent of any climate crisis that may or may not occur. The failure of our political class and the media to correctly identify the driving ideology behind this movement is extremely concerning. Extinction Rebellion must be called out for what it is, and challenged head-on at every possible opportunity. We end our adventure at this point. I hope you found something of interest in this video. If you would like to support my channel, I now have a Subscribestar page. If you're unable to support my work through Subscribestar, you can share, like or comment. It's all good. Thank you for watching.